So we have a complete lack of leadership in a simple way. I mean, you look at the Drudge Report. Oil soars, highest March price on record, almost $109 a barrel. Obama's limo exempt from new green policy. 1,000 people and companies are exempt from this Banana Republic Obamacare. Foreign banks took most from the Fed during the bailout, and that guy, Barbasol Bernanke, kept the secret. The Libya-owned bank got 73 loans of your money. And here's the topper from the Wall Street Journal. More Americans work for the government than in manufacturing, farming, fishing, forestry, mining, and utilities combined. This is a socialist government. Joining us right now is a person who is the antithesis of socialism, Donald Trump. Welcome to the Savage Nation. Donald, look what's going on in our country. The one we grew up in is not the one we're living in, is it?
No, it's changing rapidly, and it's changing for the worse, and something has to be done about it quickly, or we're going to have a whole different place.
Donald, I open up the local San Francisco paper. Tax hike on rich appeals to voters. Strong bipartisan support for 1% increase, poll shows. And then you read the poll that was done by the California Federation of Teachers. You live in Florida, which is a state tax-free, a tax-free state, and you run an incredible organization, the Mar-a-Lago. Isn't it true that many of the wealthy in Florida are, in fact, tax refugees from other states like California?
Well, it's true. I mean, very many came down from New York. They came down from other locations because Florida does have a very friendly tax area. And, you know, you can even take it to an international level when they start taxing you at a high level from the federal government. I know people, these are not people that particularly love anything. These are hardened veteran business people, and all they care about is the dollar, and maybe that's very unfortunate. But they'll leave the country in order to get tax refuge. And you're really competing now on a world basis, just like New York is competing with Florida and New Jersey and everything else. So you really have to be very careful with the tax rates, or you're going to lose a lot of great and very productive people.
Donald, in the state of California, we're paying 10.5% state tax. They want to add another 1%. There is a point at which people will flee. It's interesting what you just raised. Which countries are tax havens, in essence? I don't know of any.
Well, you can go to places like Switzerland, and, you know, frankly, there are a lot of very beautiful countries that really do cater to very wealthy people and corporations of very wealthy people, and people do leave. I mean, they will move around, and they're trying to find the best tax haven. And I don't say that in a negative way. I think it's something I wouldn't want to do necessarily. I'm very proud of this country. But people do leave, just like they leave New York, just like they leave, frankly, California, because California is losing a lot of people to other states.
Right. Well, manufacturing has gone a long time ago because of the draconian red tape. Donald, let's talk about Libya because it's a nightmare. He went in. It's unconstitutional. He bypassed Congress. He signed a secret deal to put in CIA operatives. Nothing he did was legal. Even his left wing admits that. And now they're saying people who were yesterday peaceniks, like Dianne Feinstein, are saying, go in and assassinate Gaddafi. It's shocking to me to look at this. They don't know what they're doing, do they?
Well, you know, the other thing is they really don't know who the so-called rebels are. I heard your show the other day, yesterday to be exact, and you were saying about the word rebel. It sounds so brilliant. It sounds so wonderful, like these are the greatest people. Well, You know, I'm hearing they're very closely associated with Iran. I'm hearing they're very closely associated with Al-Qaeda. I'm hearing all sorts of things about these people, and you say, what are we doing? What are we doing? Because that would actually be worse than Gaddafi. If that's the case, in my opinion, it would probably be a step worse than Gaddafi. So we're spending all of this money. We're doing it because the Arab League, which is the wealthiest countries in the world, by the way, Saudi Arabia and various others. I won't get into the names because I know them all very well, and I have friends there. But, I mean, all of these countries told us to do it, and we did it. And every time we send up a missile, it's $1.5 million. We've spent over $1 billion in the last week and a half, and they have no intention of reimbursing us. They just wanted to get rid of Gaddafi. It looks like he's a lot tougher than Obama. I mean, despite the fact that we have 1,000% advantage militarily, and it looks like he's driving the so-called glorious rebels back. And you know, it's a pretty pathetic situation.
It is. It makes America look very weak, very indecisive. You and I both know from the time we were children, even though we grew up on different sides of Union Turnpike, so to speak.
That's right.
You never start a fight that you don't think you can win. Did they not think this through, Donald?
Well, this was amazing because in the same speech, almost the same sentence, he said that we want to get rid of Obama, and then he said, but we'll do nothing to get rid of him, right? So he turns out to be a lot tougher cookie. But if you think of it, we want to get rid of it, but we don't want to do anything to help the regime change, right? And I was listening to this speech, and I'm saying, am I hearing correctly? You either want to get rid of him or you don't want to get rid of him. I mean, the truth is we don't know what we're doing.
When you say we, you mean the administration seems to be
I'm talking about our leaders.
They're taking it a day at a time. Donald, they seem to be doing this on the fly. They lurch, they jerk. According to what I've been able to discern, Obama himself was not even in favor of military action, nor was Gates. It was conducted by Hillary Clinton, Samantha Powers, and Miss Rice, who decided to go to war against Gaddafi without much thought about how to go about doing it. What kind of leadership is this? The answer is
they didn't know, very importantly, who we're fighting for. I mean, they thought the rebels were these glorious, wonderful people, and then now all of a sudden they're getting reports that 3 years ago they were shooting at us in Iraq, and they were fighting us, and, you know, it's just inconceivable, and now it looks like it's a war that, frankly, Gaddafi might end up winning, and we may be afraid to get rid of Gaddafi. I think they're finding out things about the rebels that are so bad that they're afraid to get rid of Gaddafi because they think the rebels are going to be worse.
And you know, Donald, there's no see, but you have a show where you can say to people who are stupid, "You're fired." We don't have a government where we can say you're fired. We live in a dictatorship that is punctuated by democracy every 4 years. And unfortunately, we're stuck with this group of amateurs for 2 more years. God only knows what other damage they're liable to do. So let's talk about the other damage they're liable to do. If you were president, if you do decide to run and you were president, I know you've talked about making people pay their fair share. If the Arab League were the ones who egged us on through Hillary Clinton, why don't they pick up the cost of the war? They have nothing but money.
Well, I've been saying this. They have trillions of dollars in the bank. They're the richest countries in the world. They've been ripping us off for years. I mean, just ripping us. 12 men sit around a table, and in this case all men. They sit around a table and they set the price of oil. Oil, I don't know if you heard, but oil reached almost $108 a barrel today, and that's going to be the end of our economy because you can't pay that. And, you know, I see these poor guys, they're investing in the stock. Well, the fact is when oil goes above $40, we have trouble. It's now at 108. And it's a real problem. And to think that we'd go in and not even ask them for the money that it's going to cost to get rid of their enemy, Gaddafi, is inconceivable.
Well, it's the same with every other military venture. We've talked about this on the show before, Donald. We spent, $3 trillion liberating the Shia of Iraq, and they're sitting on one of the largest oil reserves in the world. And Bush never demanded reparations in the form of free oil? What's that all about?
Well, you know, the most interesting thing of all is Iraq, because we went in, we hit somebody that, frankly, we could have gone after the people that really, you know, the terrorists didn't come from Iraq that knocked down the World Trade Center. They came from other places. Namely, if you look, they put their families on the plane. You know where they headed? Back to Saudi Arabia.
Right, they came from Saudi Arabia, of course.
They headed back to Saudi Arabia. They didn't head to Iraq. But regardless, so we got stuck in this war. We've spent $1.5 trillion. We've lost thousands of great people. We have people walking around with one arm and one leg all over. And what do we have? Within 15 minutes after we leave, Iran, because we have so denuded and weakened that, you know, for years, for hundreds of years, they'd be fighting each other back and forth. We have so denuded Iraq that within minutes after we leave, they're not going to mess when we're there, but once we leave, we're not going back because we don't have the heart to go back after that mess after so many years. Iran is going to come over, take over Iraq and the oil fields. And by the way, you just said it. People don't realize this. The second largest oil fields in the world after Saudi Arabia. So Iran is going to come in. They're going to take over the oil fields, and all of those people will have died in vain because that's what we're going to get. We're going to get that. So what I said last night, very simply, if I know, and I know for a fact, Iran is going to come on. They probably won't even have to fire a shot because if you look at what's happening, they're getting along very well with the so-called leaders of Iraq. I don't know if you see.
They are the leaders, but it's look. We toppled the Sunni leader who was the monster Saddam, who kept the Shia population under control through terrorism. Frankly,
and who killed terrorists, by the way, Saddam.
That's exactly right. He was actually.
Now it's
He was our best friend. Saddam was our best friend, and everybody knows that.
Well, I will say this. He killed terrorists. You didn't have terrorists in Iraq. He used to shoot them. He used to kill them immediately. Now it's the Harvard of terrorism. You want to become a terrorist, you go to Iraq. Here's the point. You go, if we know that Iran is taking over the oil, and we know that's going to happen, we should take the oil, and we should stay there. You know, in the old days, when you fought a war, you took over a country, you fought a war, you won. We fight a war. After everyone's crippled, we go and we leave, and people that we never even heard of take over the country. And by the way, these people will be just like Saddam. They'll be building palaces to themselves very shortly. It is unbelievable. So, what I say, second largest oil fields in the world. If we know, and we know, that Iran will come in, we say, Iran, you just stay right over there. Don't worry about it. We wrap our soldiers around the oil fields. We take over the oil fields. We pay ourselves back $1.5 trillion. We give some money to Britain. They spent plenty. And others that helped us. And we also take care of Iraq. We give plenty. There's plenty for everybody. They have $15 trillion worth. I don't know if you know this. $15 trillion worth of oil underground. There's plenty to go around for everybody.
Well, I agree with you on that. This was a blunder of Bush, not of Obama. But now Obama seems to be making the same type of blunder on a smaller scale in Libya. And I don't know who advises these people is the issue. What about drilling in America? I am a conservationist. I have been all my life. I have the bona fides for it. I don't want to have to reiterate them, Donald. But there comes a point at which you have to drill, and drill. We can drill in the Rocky Mountains. We can drill in the Alaskan slope. We can drill off the shore of California. Would you agree that we're not drilling sufficiently for our own needs?
Well, in many ways, we're not drilling at all. I mean, these people that are trying to go back into the Gulf, they're having a hell of a time getting back in there, and they're just now getting certain clearances, and nobody knows what took so long. We should drill all over. I mean, we should drill. I've gotten many environmental awards. I'm very environmentally conscious. I have gotten so many awards. And people don't know that about me. But we should drill. We have to drill. And you can drill in a very responsible manner. The other thing we should use is coal. We have more coal than anybody. We should use coal. Now, I don't know, when they use the word clean coal, I don't know if it's perfectly clean, but when you look at what's happening in Japan, you know, all of a sudden people are changing their mind to nuclear, and I'm not sure I blame them.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. There is low sulfur coal plant. There are low sulfur coal plants that are being shut down as we speak. They're perfectly fine and very efficient. Donald, you do business with a lot of folks all around the world and in China. You've told the show, you mentioned on the show that the Chinese laugh at us for the foolishness of our leaders. Is it that they're naive, or is it they're just simply bought and paid for, in your opinion?
Well, I used to think that they were, frankly, naive and or stupid. I don't know which is the better word to describe it. But I actually think that if you go down to Washington and you try and get a lobbyist, and then you say, we want a lobbyist against, let's say, OPEC, maybe you can get some guy that just graduated from college, but for the most part, they're all taken because OPEC has them all. I mean, they have so many lobbyists, it's incredible. China has so many lobbyists. So I really think that the lobbyists have a lot to do with it. You know, they go in representing China, they go in representing OPEC, and these politicians are like, they don't want to mess around because they have fundraisers. The lobbyists give them big fundraisers for little political campaigns. It's hard to believe. And what I told you last time, and I say it again, because it happened recently. I know the people of the world. I know the very rich people of the world. Many times they buy apartments. I sold one recently for $33 million. I sold one for $40 million. I sell a lot of very wealthy people apartments. Okay, so I get to know a lot of people. People from other countries cannot believe how stupid our leadership is. They cannot believe. And by the way, I don't hold it against the other countries. If China can get away with what they're doing with the manipulation of their currency and everything else, I say my hat is off to you.
There you go.
But it's hard to believe. And the people that I know, now they're not as open with me now because they're hearing I'm considering running. They're saying, one of them said, oh my God, I can't believe I told you all this stuff. I had no idea you'd ever do this. But they say to me, previously, we cannot believe that you guys allow us to get away with it. And then they all laugh, and everybody laughs, and everybody's having a good time, but they can't believe it. And then the president of China that just rips us off, we give him a state dinner at the White House fit for a king, which of course he is, essentially, but we give him a dinner honoring him at the White House instead of saying, folks, there's not going to be any dinner. And we have such power over them. What a lot of people don't realize, We are rebuilding China because they're doing so much. They made $300 billion. They're going to make more than $300 billion on us. Let's call it profit this year. $300 billion. In addition to that, they're taking all our jobs. They're making all our things. The funny thing is, then they take all that money and they loan it back to us, and we pay them interest. So with the right thinking in the White House, that could be reversed so quickly your head would spin. And believe me, and I know something about this, believe me, we have the cards. They don't have the cards.
Well, Donald, if you do decide to run for the presidency, I will nominate myself to run the Environmental Protection Agency, which I would eliminate within the first year. Because I have the credentials to do so. And believe me, nobody wants to protect the airs, waters, and places better than me. I've been doing it most of my life. Donald, please stay with us for 5 more minutes because I want to get 1 or 2 questions in from around the country. You got another minute for us?
I will do that, Michael.
Donald Trump on the Savage Nation. I'll be right back.
Savage.
Eddie, my love, I love you so. How I want it for you.
It is the Rock and Roll Friday on the Savage Nation show. Whatever. Could you play the music again? It always dies out the minute I say a word.
Don't make me wait.
Right, now you can kill it. Welcome to the program. We have Donald Trump waiting on the other line from Mar-a-Lago. Donald, welcome back to the Savage Nation. Always a pleasure to have you on the program. Donald, you are in Florida at this time?
I am.
We have almost no time. I want to ask you something. You heard my show yesterday, and we talked about it, and you said I'm a man of practical nature. I don't know how you put it, commonsensical or something to that effect.
I said you are a man of great common sense.
Did you hear my comments that when I was a young kid, grew up over there on the other side of the Union Turnpike, I'd go to work with my dad on Saturdays, and he would say to me, no radio, because we had to go to work. He said, you got to get serious. He didn't even want me to listen to the radio.
Right.
I'm mentioning it's kind of jokey in a way, but, your dad was a very successful real estate developer himself, and, of course, you went way beyond him. Were you trained from a young age in the business? Did he take you to work in his world?
Michael, I watched my father, and my father was a builder in Queens and in Brooklyn. And he built houses, and then he built some apartment houses and things, and he was a really good builder. And I watched him, and I learned 2 things. Number one, I learned a little bit about negotiating, and I learned lots of different things about real estate. But I also learned, he was a very hard worker. He'd work all the time. He loved it.
Right.
And he was a happy man. And I saw that, you can work really hard and be happy. And that was something I actually learned from my father.
Isn't that something? That's probably one of the greatest gifts a man could give his son. Because the ethos in America is the opposite, which is that work makes you unhappy, and gambling, for example, I shouldn't say it because but doing nothing makes you happy. It's crazy. I myself am a 7-day-a-week guy. Otherwise, I get bored to death.
Well, there is something nice about it. I mean, there's something great about achievement. There's something great, and this country has really lost a lot of that spirit, and we have to get it back.
Well, I hope you do decide to run, not just because I've gotten to know you and I think that you're a sincere guy, but because America's in very deep trouble. We don't have sincere men who can lead us out of this swamp we're in, Donald. And many people are saying we need a practical guy who's a businessman, who has compassion, who can save us. And I really do hope you run, Donald, truthfully.
Well, I'm really thinking about it. I'm going to make a decision by June, and you may be pleasantly surprised. I will. I just hate what's happening to this country. We're not respected. We're not successful anymore. And at this rate, I will tell you, we will not be a great country for long. So I am giving.
All right, I'll tell you what. In that regard, if you do run, I want the FCC, not the environment, not the EPA.
Okay, you have a deal.
Okay, I have absolutely no ambition in government. I want you to know that right off the bat. I'm very happy writing books and doing radio. Donald Trump, thanks a million for sharing a few minutes with us on the Savage Nation. I'll be right back.